My name is Brenda Miller, and I'm 32 years old. 3 days ago, I woke up on my birthday morning to find my credit card melted in the kitchen trash and $25,000 missing from my savings account. But what happened at my birthday party that night left over 100 guests speechless when my father finally revealed why he'd been silent for 10 years. The woman who stole from me was sitting at the family table, wearing jewelry bought with my money, laughing about teaching me a lesson about being too weak. She didn't know that sometimes the quietest person in the room holds all the cards. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Now let me tell you how my family learned that kindness isn't weakness, it's patience waiting for the perfect moment. That morning started like any other birthday, except for the acrid smell coming from my kitchen. I followed it to the trash can, and there it was. My primary credit card, melted into a twisted piece of plastic and metal. The melted plastic still smelled like betrayal when I found it in my kitchen trash. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone to check my accounts. $25,000. Gone. Not transferred, not pending, just gone. I sank into a kitchen chair, staring at the screen. 3 years of saving for a house down payment vanished overnight. My credit score would tank. My position as chief accountant at Dad's company could be questioned if anyone thought I couldn't manage my own finances. The security cameras. I rushed to check the home security app, but the footage from last night through this morning had been deleted. Someone with the access code had covered their tracks. Only 3 people knew that code: me, Dad, and Linda, my stepmother who'd insisted on having it for emergencies. I started piecing together the strange events from the past week. Linda asking detailed questions about my savings goals. Melissa, my younger half-sister, suddenly interested in my banking apps, claiming she wanted to learn about financial planning. The way they'd exchanged glances when I mentioned my birthday dinner reservation. My laptop showed the transaction history before it was wiped, multiple ATM withdrawals at the maximum daily limit, wire transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, and luxury purchases at Nordstrom, Saks, and Tiffany's, all processed between midnight and 6 a.m. while I was sleeping in my own bed, trusting my family. The kitchen felt smaller, suffocating. This wasn't just theft, it was calculated, deliberate, timed for maximum impact. They wanted me to discover this on my birthday morning, hours before the elaborate party Linda had insisted on throwing at the Grand Meridian tonight. My phone buzzed with a text notification. The preview showed it was from Melissa, and I could see the beginning. "Morning, sis. Paris is amazing. Thanks for—" I didn't need to open it to know what she was thanking me for. My stomach turned as another notification popped up, Linda calling. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what she'd say. Something about tonight's party, peppered with false concern and barely hidden satisfaction. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Melissa. I opened Melissa's message, and there it was, a selfie from the Eiffel Tower, designer sunglasses, Chanel bag, champagne in hand. The caption read, "Morning sis, Paris is amazing. Thanks for making this trip possible. Some of us know how to actually live life instead of hoarding money like a scared little mouse." The next photo showed shopping bags from Louis Vuitton, Hermes, and Dior. "Don't worry, I'll bring you back a keychain or something cute. That's more your speed, right?" Before I could process the rage building in my chest, my phone rang. Linda. "Brenda, darling," her voice dripped with false sweetness. "Just calling to remind you about tonight, 8 o'clock sharp at the Grand Meridian. Everyone will be there, your father's business partners, the extended family, even the Hartmans from the country club." "Linda, my credit card was— Saya Sas." "Oh, and do wear something appropriate. I know you prefer those modest little outfits, but this is a real celebration. Maybe buy something nice? Oh, wait." She paused, and I could hear her smile. "Well, I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're so good at making do with less." "Linda, someone stole—" "Life teaches us lessons when we need them most, sweetheart. Some people are too weak to protect what's theirs. They make themselves victims by being passive little doormats. But tonight isn't about your problems. It's about family. See you at 8. She hung up before I could respond. Another text from Melissa. Mom says you might be upset about something. Don't be such a baby, Bren. It's your birthday. Though I guess at 32, still single, still living in that tiny apartment, still letting everyone walk all over you. Maybe it's more of a pity party? I set my phone down carefully, resisting the urge to throw it against the wall. They weren't even trying to hide it. They wanted me to know. Wanted me to show up tonight, destroyed, humiliated, unable to fight back in front of all those people. Sometimes the best revenge is just showing up with a smile. I pulled out my laptop and started documenting everything. Screenshots, transaction records, the deleted security footage logs. Then I texted the one person I needed. James, it's Brenda Miller. That situation we discussed? It's happening, tonight. His reply was instant. Understood. Everything is ready. See you at 8. I had 5 hours to prepare. They thought they were teaching me a lesson about weakness. They had no idea what lesson they were about to learn themselves. As I sat there gathering evidence, memories flooded back of how I'd become the family doormat. It started the day Linda married Dad 10 years ago, when she introduced Melissa as the daughter who inherited the Miller's strength. Being kind isn't weakness, but they never understood that. Every family gathering followed the same script. Melissa would demand something outrageous. A new car at 16, a gap year in Europe, startup capital for her 5th failed business venture. Dad would hesitate, and Linda would turn to me. Brenda understands family sacrifice, don't you, sweetheart? She's not selfish like some people. And I'd cave. Every time. When Melissa crashed her 3rd car, I co-signed for the 4th because family helps family. When Linda needed $10,000 for her charity gala that somehow never materialized, I wrote the check because refusing would be unsupportive. When they forgot my birthday 3 years running but threw Melissa elaborate parties, I smiled and said it didn't matter because making a fuss would be childish. The comparisons were constant. Melissa knows what she wants and takes it. That's real strength, Linda would announce at dinners. Poor Brenda, always waiting for permission to live her own life. They mistook my restraint for weakness, my kindness for stupidity. While Melissa threw tantrums to get her way, I built my career quietly. While Linda spent Dad's money on status symbols, I saved every penny. While they performed their power plays, I watched, learned, and waited. The irony was beautiful, really. They'd spent so much time calling me weak that they never noticed Dad pulling me aside for private conversations about the company's future. They were so busy taking that they never saw what I was building. But why had Dad stayed silent all these years? That was the one piece I couldn't figure out. He watched them humiliate me, use me, dismiss me, and said nothing. Until 6 months ago, when everything started to change. The past 6 months had shown a dramatic escalation in their contempt. It started when Dad promoted me to chief accountant of Miller Industries. Linda's reaction was immediate and vicious. Robert, she doesn't have the backbone for leadership, Linda announced at the family dinner celebrating my promotion. Melissa should be groomed for executive roles. She has that killer instinct Brenda lacks. Melissa had laughed. Seriously, Dad? Brenda can barely say no to telemarketers. How's she going to handle corporate negotiations? Dad's silence spoke louder than their words ever could. Then came the exclusions. Family business meetings moved to times when I was traveling for work. Investment decisions were made without consulting the chief accountant. Melissa started using the company credit card for personal expenses, submitting receipts directly to Linda for approval instead of following protocol through my department. Don't be so rigid, Brenda, Linda had said when I questioned a $5,000 charge at a spa. Family businesses run on trust, not bureaucracy. Unless you don't trust your own sister? The final straw was last month's board meeting. Linda had actually suggested restructuring the finance department to reduce Brenda's stress levels. She'd prepared a whole presentation about how I was overwhelmed and too emotional for the position, recommending Melissa as co-CFO despite her having no financial experience whatsoever. That's when I noticed something odd. Dad had started meeting with James Chen, our family lawyer, every Thursday. Privately. No Linda, no Melissa, no me. The meetings weren't on the company calendar, but I saw James's car in the executive parking garage like clockwork. When I asked Dad about it, he simply said, "Patience, Brenda. Sometimes the best strategy is letting people reveal their true nature." I thought it was another of his cryptic business philosophies. Now, staring at my drained bank account, I was beginning to understand exactly what he meant. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, you'll understand what comes next. Before we continue, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I'm curious, have you ever had family members mistake your kindness for weakness? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories help me realize I'm not alone in this. Some of you have asked if I regret being patient for so long, and honestly, you're about to see why patience was my greatest weapon. Now let me tell you what happened when I walked into that birthday party. Standing outside the Grand Meridian at 7:45 p.m., I calculated the real cost of their betrayal. 3 years of savings, gone in 3 minutes of greed. $25,000 meant 1,100 hours of overtime, 36 months of skipped vacations, and countless sacrifices to build something they destroyed overnight. But the financial damage went deeper. My credit score would plummet from 780 to below 600 once the maxed out cards hit my report. The mortgage pre-approval I'd worked toward for 5 years? Gone. The investment property that would have been my retirement security? Impossible now. As chief accountant, this disaster could destroy my professional reputation. How could I manage millions in company assets if I couldn't protect my own accounts? The whispers would start Monday. Did you hear about Brenda Miller? Lost $25,000 and didn't even notice until it was gone. My phone showed 17 missed calls from the bank's fraud department. Each voicemail more urgent than the last, documenting suspicious activity I couldn't report without admitting my own family had robbed me. The irony burned. I'd spent years building perfect credit, only to have it torched by people who called me weak for being obsessed with financial security. Through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see them all gathering. Dad's business partners, potential investors, everyone who mattered in our professional circle. Linda had made sure to invite them all to witness what she thought would be my humiliation. The maitre d' opened the door. "Ms. Miller, your family is waiting in the celestial ballroom. Your father asked me to give you this." He handed me a small envelope. Inside, Dad's handwriting. "Trust the process. R." I tucked it into my purse next to the screenshots and evidence I'd gathered. If they wanted to discuss family finances in front of everyone, I'd give them exactly what they asked for. The celestial ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and $100-a-plate place settings. Over 100 guests mingled with champagne, Dad's biggest clients, board members, country club elite, and extended family I hadn't seen in years. Linda had orchestrated this perfectly. Maximum witnesses for maximum humiliation. Sometimes the hardest battles are fought in evening gowns. Brenda, our biggest client, Harrison Walsh, approached with his wife. "Your father speaks so highly of your work. That restructuring proposal you presented saved us $2 million last quarter." Before I could respond, Linda appeared, sliding between us like silk-wrapped steel. "Yes, Brenda tries so hard, doesn't she? Of course, Melissa has that natural business instinct. She doesn't need to overthink everything like some people." Mrs. Walsh looked uncomfortable. Harrison frowned slightly but said nothing. The pattern I'd ignored for years suddenly seemed so obvious. Linda systematically undermining me to anyone who mattered. Across the room, I spotted James Chen near the bar, briefcase at his feet. He raised his glass slightly. A signal. Everything was in place. The guest list was more than social. These were witnesses to whatever was about to unfold. "Ladies and gentlemen," Linda's voice rang out, "please take your seats for a special toast." The stakes couldn't be higher. If I stayed silent tonight, I'd forever be the weak daughter who let her family rob her blind. But causing a scene could destroy the business relationships Dad had spent decades building. Our competitors were here too, circling like sharks, ready to use any family drama against us. I found my assigned seat, at the secondary family table, while Melissa sat at Dad's right hand at the main table. The place card next to mine read, James Chen, escrow. He leaned over and whispered, "Your father wants you to know he's proud of your restraint, but restraint and surrender aren't the same thing." The Grand Meridian's ambiance was perfect for Linda's production. Soft jazz, golden lighting that made everyone look successful, and enough space between tables for dramatic entrances and exits. I'd barely stepped into the ballroom when Melissa intercepted me at the entrance. "Welcome to your party, sister. Hope you can afford the memories." Her smile was sharp as the new diamond earrings she wore, earrings I recognized from the Tiffany's charge on my account. She air-kissed my cheeks, whispering, "Love the dress. Ross? Target? Very... you." Linda glided over in a $3,000 gown I'd seen her buy last week, on the company card naturally. "Brenda, darling, everyone's been asking about the birthday girl. I've been telling them how you're learning so much in your little accounting role." "Chief accountant," I corrected quietly. "Yes, well, titles are just words, aren't they? Melissa's been sharing her European adventure with everyone. Such initiative, taking that trip to study international business trends." She touched my arm with false concern. "You really should travel more, dear. Though I suppose that requires resources." The room felt like a stage, and I was the only one who hadn't received the script. Board members clustered near the bar, their wives gossiping by the windows. My Uncle Richard, who hadn't spoken to me since I'd refused to loan him money last year, was suddenly very interested in examining the wall art when I passed. Dad sat at the main table, silent and observing. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes tracked every movement, every interaction. He'd positioned himself with a clear view of the entire room, the CEO surveying his domain. "Robert's been so generous with this party," Linda announced to a group of investors. "Of course, some of us contribute more to the family than others. Melissa just closed a major deal in Paris. Didn't you, sweetheart?" Melissa laughed, champagne already flushing her cheeks. "Let's just say the Miller name opens doors, when you know how to use it." I took my seat, noting how James had positioned his briefcase within easy reach. The leather portfolio inside contained documents I couldn't see, but the way he guarded it suggested importance. Dad stood up slowly, his movement commanding instant attention. The room began to quiet, anticipating the traditional birthday toast. But the look in his eyes promised something else entirely. Dad raised his champagne glass, but before he could speak, Melissa jumped up, grabbing the microphone from the DJ stand. "Sorry, Daddy, but I just have to share." Her voice echoed through the ballroom. "Paris was absolutely transformative." "The shopping was incredible," she continued, projecting photos onto the ballroom's display screen from her phone. Linda stood, adding, "Strong women seize opportunities. Unlike some people," Melissa's eyes found mine, "who hoard every penny." "Afraid of actually living," Linda chimed in, tag-teaming. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some watched with barely hidden fascination, others looked away. Harrison Walsh's expression had turned stone-cold professional. "That's quite enough," Dad's voice cut through, quiet but firm. "Oh, Robert," Linda laughed. "Don't coddle her." "Some lessons cost more than others," Melissa added, her smile vicious. "Enjoy it while it lasts," I said quietly, but my voice carried. The room went still. It was the first time I'd spoken publicly against them, and the shock was palpable. Melissa's face flushed darker, not from champagne anymore. "What's that supposed to mean?" Melissa demanded. "Nothing, just economics," I replied calmly. Linda's laugh was forced. "Brenda thinks she understands money." "I understand theft," I said evenly. The silence that followed was deafening. Guests exchanged glances, some pulling out phones to discreetly text others. This was the drama they'd come for, even if they'd never admit it. "How dare you?" Linda started. "Sit down," Dad commanded. Not requested. Commanded. Linda's mouth opened, then closed. She'd never heard that tone from him before. Neither had I. Melissa, give me the microphone. Dad extended his hand. But Daddy, I was just… Now. She handed it over, confusion replacing confidence. The room held its collective breath. James Chen quietly opened his briefcase, pulling out a leather portfolio. Ladies and gentlemen, Dad began, his voice carrying the weight of authority that had built an empire. You've come to celebrate my daughter's birthday, but more importantly, you're about to witness why Miller Industries has thrived for 3 generations. He looked directly at me. It's not about taking, it's about knowing when to reveal your hand. Linda grabbed her champagne glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. Melissa sank into her chair, and I sat perfectly still, finally understanding why Dad had been silent for so long. Before Dad could continue, James Chen stood up, his movement deliberate and professional. The entire room noticed. When the family lawyer stands at a birthday party, people pay attention. Timing is everything in law and in life, James said quietly as he passed my chair, documents in hand. He walked to the main table, stopping beside Dad. Mr. Miller, shall I? Dad nodded. Not yet, James, but stay close. The interaction was subtle but loaded with meaning. Board members straightened in their seats. Harrison Walsh pulled out his phone, likely recording. Everyone sensed something significant was about to unfold. Brenda, James said, making eye contact with me. That matter we discussed earlier? All the documentation is in order. Linda's voice cut through, sharp with suspicion. What documentation? Robert, what is this about? Business, Linda. Something you've been very interested in lately. Dad's tone was neutral, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Melissa laughed nervously. God, why is everyone being so dramatic? It's just a birthday party. Yes, Dad agreed. A birthday, a milestone, a time for gifts and revelations. James returned to our table, setting the portfolio between us. The leather cover bore the Miller Industries logo and a label I couldn't quite read from my angle, but I noticed Linda trying desperately to see it from across the room. Mr. Chen, Harrison Walsh called out, I wasn't aware you handled family celebrations. I handle family matters, Mr. Walsh, James replied carefully. Sometimes those matters require proper documentation, witnesses, accountability. The word accountability hung in the air like a blade. Linda's knuckles went white. Melissa reached for her phone, probably to check her bank accounts. Shall we eat first? Dad suggested, his calm demeanor at odds with the tension. The salmon is exceptional tonight. But nobody moved toward their plates. Everyone was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Dad set down his champagne and walked to the center of the room, each step measured and deliberate. The soft jazz faded as the DJ, sensing the moment, quietly lowered the volume. I've been silent for too long, Dad said, his voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. He looked directly at me, and for the first time in years, I saw warmth in his eyes. Not disappointment, not indifference, but genuine pride. Linda and Melissa hadn't noticed. They were too busy exchanging worried glances. 10 years ago, Dad continued, I remarried, hoping to give my daughters a complete family. He paused, surveying the room. I've spent the last decade observing what that family has become. Robert, this isn't the time. Linda started to rise. Sit. One word. She sat. The power dynamic in the room shifted visibly. Board members who'd been casually socializing now watched with laser focus. This wasn't a birthday toast. It was something else entirely. In business, Dad said, we often test potential successors without their knowledge. We watch how they handle pressure, adversity, and most importantly, betrayal. My heart started racing. Melissa's phone clattered onto the table as her hands began trembling. Some people, Dad's eyes moved to Linda, believe power comes from taking, from manipulation, from crushing those they perceive as weak. He pulled out his own phone, swiping to something on the screen. Others understand that true strength is restraint, patience, documentation. That last word made Linda flinch. "James," Dad called out, "I believe it's time." James stood again, picking up the portfolio. "With your permission, Mr. Miller, I should note that everyone in this room is about to become a witness to legal proceedings." The ballroom erupted in whispers. Witness? Legal proceedings? At a birthday party? Dad raised his hand for silence. "My daughter Brenda has something that was stolen from her. Tonight, she gets it back, with interest." Before Dad could elaborate, Linda seized control, standing with forced confidence. "Since we're sharing family moments, let me tell you about the birthday gift we gave Brenda." She gestured to the display screen. "Melissa, show them Paris." The screen lit up with photo after photo. Melissa at the Louvre, shopping on the Champs-Élysées, dining at Michelin-starred restaurants. Each image was more extravagant than the last. "Some lessons are more expensive than others," Linda announced, her voice carrying over the growing murmurs. "Brenda needed to learn that hoarding money while family struggles is selfish, so we taught her about sharing." $25,000, Melissa added, standing beside her mother. "That's what real family support looks like. While Brenda sat on her savings like Scrooge, I was investing in international connections." The room erupted. Board members gasped. Harrison Walsh's wife covered her mouth. Uncle Richard actually laughed, thinking it was a joke. "You took her money?" someone called out. "We redistributed it," Linda corrected, her smile razor-sharp. "Brenda's too weak to use it properly, always saving, never living. Someone had to show her that money is meant to be spent." She turned to me, eyes glittering with malice. "Consider it tuition for a life lesson, sweetheart. The weak get eaten in this family." Melissa pulled up her banking app, showing the screen to nearby guests. "Look, I'm not hiding anything. Yes, I used Brenda's cards. Yes, I transferred her savings. She's family ATM. It's what she's good at." The humiliation was complete. Or it would have been if I hadn't noticed something crucial. James was recording everything on his phone, legally, with witnesses. "So, you admit," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, "in front of everyone here, that you stole $25,000 from my accounts?" The room went silent again. "Stole?" Linda laughed. "We taught you a lesson about family." "A lesson," I repeated. "James, did you get that?" "Every word, Ms. Miller." Dad stepped forward, and his expression was no longer neutral. It was cold, corporate, the face that had crushed competitors and built an empire. "Now," he said, "let me tell you what lesson you actually taught." Linda doubled down, sensing she was losing control. "Brenda needs to learn strength. Look at her. 32, single, no backbone. She'll thank us one day." "Strength isn't always loud," I said quietly, but the microphone Dad had set down was still on, carrying my words. "Oh, please," Melissa scoffed. "You've never fought for anything in your life. You just exist, like furniture." Some guests laughed uncomfortably. Others looked appalled. The room was splitting. Those who saw cruelty and those who were entertained by it. "She's right, though," Linda continued, addressing the crowd. "How can someone so passive run a finance department? Melissa has that killer instinct businesses need. Brenda just has spreadsheets." "Weak people hide behind rules and paperwork," Melissa added. "Strong people take action." Harrison Walsh stood up. "Mrs. Miller, are you seriously admitting to theft at a public event?" "It's not theft when it's family teaching family," Linda snapped. "Something you'd understand if you knew how real families operate." The insult to Harrison, implying his family wasn't real, was a fatal error. He was our biggest client, and his expression went from concerned to furious. "Robert," Harrison said coldly, "is this how Miller Industries operates now?" That's when Dad spoke, his voice cutting through everything. "Enough." The single word carried more authority than any shout. Everyone, Linda, Melissa, the guests, even the waitstaff, froze. "You want to discuss family business?" Dad asked Linda. "Let's discuss it. All of it." He turned to the room. 6 months ago, I discovered systematic theft from Miller Industries, company cards used for personal expenses, fraudulent invoices, embezzlement. Linda's face went white. Robert, you can't. I can. I have. And I will. He nodded to James. Mr. Chen, please present the documentation. James opened the portfolio, revealing a stack of papers thick enough to be a small book. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to witness is the legal transfer of complete financial authority of Miller Industries to its rightful guardian. No, Linda breathed. No, you wouldn't. Dad looked at her with something almost like pity. I already did, 6 months ago. This is where everything changed. If you're still watching, you're about to witness one of the most satisfying reversals I've ever experienced. But first, what would you have done in my position? Would you have walked out, fought back, or waited like I did? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. And if this story resonates with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means everything, and knowing you're there listening gives me strength to share these difficult moments. Now let me show you what real power looks like. Dad walked to the center of the room, his presence commanding absolute attention. I gave you rope, and you hung yourselves with it. For 10 years, he continued, his voice steady and measured. I've watched my wife and younger daughter treat Brenda like she was somehow less than. Weak, you called her. Passive. A doormat. He pulled out his phone, connecting it to the display screen. Let me show you what I've observed. The screen filled with security footage from the company offices. January 15th, Melissa charges $8,000 at Bergdorf's on the company card, listing it as Client Entertainment. The client? Her personal trainer. The room gasped. Melissa started to speak, but Dad raised his hand. February 10th. Linda withdraws $15,000 from the emergency fund for a charity gala that never happened. March 3rd. Another $12,000 for business development that went straight to her personal account. Each transaction appeared on screen with supporting documentation, bank statements, forged signatures, falsified invoices. But here's the interesting part, Dad said, his eyes finding mine. Every single one of these thefts was caught and documented by our chief accountant. Brenda knew. She filed reports. She followed protocol. And when I told her to wait, to be patient, she did. I felt the room's attention shift to me. The weak daughter suddenly didn't look so weak. You see, Dad continued, Brenda wasn't passive. She was building a case. Every transaction you made, Linda, every luxury purchase, every diverted fund, she documented it all. She could have exposed you months ago, but I asked her to wait. Why? Linda's voice cracked. To see how far you'd go, to let you reveal your true nature completely. He paused. And last night, you crossed the final line. You stole from your own family. Not from the company, from Brenda personally. $25,000. That's not... We were teaching, Melissa stammered. You were committing felony theft, James interrupted, which you just confessed to in front of over 100 witnesses. Dad turned back to the screen. The security footage you deleted from Brenda's apartment, Linda, it automatically backed up to the cloud. We have you entering with the spare key at 11:47 p.m. We have you accessing her laptop. We have everything. The screen showed grainy but clear footage of Linda at my kitchen table, my laptop open, entering transfer after transfer while Melissa kept watch. You thought you were so clever, Dad said. But you forgot one thing. I didn't build this company by being stupid, and I didn't raise Brenda to be weak. I raised her to be patient, strategic, brilliant. He looked at me with undisguised pride. The weak one was never Brenda. It was the two of you, so consumed by greed, you couldn't see the trap closing around you. James stepped forward, pulling out the first document from the portfolio. This is a power of attorney for financial affairs, executed 6 months ago, granting Brenda Miller complete authority over all Miller Industries financial decisions. The papers were signed 6 months ago. You've been stealing from your own sister's company. Linda stumbled backward. That's not possible. I would have known. You were too busy stealing to notice, James continued, producing another document. This is the board resolution, unanimously approved, appointing Brenda Miller as Chief Financial Officer with full executive powers, effective immediately upon any breach of fiduciary duty by current family members. He held up a third document. And this is the criminal complaint we're prepared to file Monday morning if full restitution isn't made within 48 hours. The room was absolutely silent. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving, frozen by the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Every transaction over $1,000, James announced, requires Brenda's signature as of 6 months ago. Every single purchase you made, Linda, every transfer, every withdrawal, all unauthorized, all criminal. Melissa's phone clattered to the floor. But I'm family. So is Brenda, Dad said coldly. Yet that didn't stop you from robbing her. James pulled out his tablet, showing bank statements. As of this moment, all accounts linked to Linda and Melissa Miller have been frozen pending investigation. The forensic audit is already underway. You can't do this, Linda shrieked. I'm your wife. And you've been embezzling from our company for 3 years, Dad replied. The prenuptial agreement you signed, remember that? Specifically states that any criminal activity voids all financial claims. Harrison Walsh stood up slowly. Robert, Brenda, on behalf of Walsh Enterprises, I want to state publicly that we have complete confidence in your leadership and integrity. In fact, we'd like to increase our contract by 40%, effective immediately. Other business partners began standing one by one, declaring their support. The tide hadn't just turned, it had become a tsunami. The $25,000 you stole from Brenda's personal accounts, James continued, is due in full within 48 hours. The $347,000 you've embezzled from Miller Industries over 3 years is subject to a separate criminal investigation. 300? Melissa couldn't even finish the number. Did you think we weren't watching? I finally stood, my voice calm and clear. Every shopping spree, every business trip, every diverted payment, I documented it all. I gave you chance after chance to stop. But you were right about one thing, Linda. Some lessons are expensive. The display screen changed to show a single document, the new corporate structure of Miller Industries. At the top, as CEO, Robert Miller. Directly beneath, as CFO, with full financial authority, Brenda Miller. Linda and Melissa weren't even on the chart. I stood up fully, my voice steady and professional. The room held its breath as I spoke. You have 48 hours. The clock starts now. Brenda, please, Melissa started. 48 hours to return the $25,000 you stole from my personal accounts, I continued, not acknowledging her interruption. This is non-negotiable. Linda tried to approach me, but James stepped between us. Mrs. Miller, I'd advise against any contact that could be construed as intimidation. Additionally, I said, pulling out my phone to check the time, it's now 8:47 p.m. on Saturday. You have until 8:47 p.m. Monday to provide a full accounting of all company funds you've misappropriated. Every receipt, every transaction, every penny. We can't possibly, Linda protested. Then I suggest you start immediately. My tone was calm, professional, the voice I used in board meetings. James has the forensic audit preliminary report. We know the amount down to the cent. Any discrepancy between what you report and what we've found will be considered additional fraud. Melissa was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Brenda, I'm your sister! Yes, I agreed. And you burned my credit card, stole my savings, and humiliated me in front of everyone. Family doesn't make you immune to consequences. Mr. Chen, I turned to James, please ensure they receive the formal notice of account freezing and the terms of restitution. Already prepared, James handed them each an envelope. You'll also find the contact information for the criminal attorney I'd recommend you retain. The room was so quiet, you could hear Linda's sharp intake of breath as she opened her envelope. One more thing, I added. Your corporate credit cards were canceled as of noon today. Your key cards to Miller Industries offices have been deactivated. Your company vehicles need to be returned by Monday morning. My car? Melissa gasped. The company's car, I corrected, which you've been using for personal purposes in violation of policy. Linda fell to her knees, actually grabbed my dress. Brenda, please, we're family. You can't do this. My kindness was never weakness. Your cruelty was. I stepped back, removing her hands from my dress with quiet dignity. We can talk about this, she pleaded. Work something out. Robert, tell her. I'm done telling Brenda anything, Dad said firmly. She's the CFO. These are her decisions. Melissa tried a different approach, her voice shifting to wounded. So this is it? You're destroying your own family? Is that what you want? I'm not destroying anything, I replied evenly. I'm setting boundaries. You're experiencing consequences. There's a difference. Please, Linda begged, mascara running like black rivers. Let's discuss this privately. Not here, not like this. You chose the venue when you decided to humiliate me publicly, I reminded her. You invited all these witnesses to what you thought would be my degradation. Now they've witnessed something else entirely. James stepped forward. Ms. Miller, shall we proceed with the criminal filing? I looked at Linda and Melissa, both pale and shaking. That depends on them. Full restitution in 48 hours, and I'll consider it a civil matter. 1 minute late, $1 short, and it becomes criminal. But where will we live? Melissa wailed. How will we? The same way I would have if you'd succeeded in destroying me, I said. You'll figure it out. You're strong, remember? You have that killer instinct. Dad moved to stand beside me, his hand briefly touching my shoulder in support. I believe this party is over. Linda and Melissa stood there, frozen, as if unable to process that their world had just collapsed. Leave, Dad said quietly. Now. They stumbled toward the exit, Linda turning back once as if to speak, then thinking better of it. The ballroom doors had barely closed behind Linda and Melissa when the room erupted, not in chaos, but in something unexpected, applause. It started with Harrison Walsh, slow and deliberate, then spread through the entire gathering. We always knew you were the strong one, Harrison said, approaching with his wife. Your father chose his successor wisely. Within minutes, I was surrounded by board members and business partners, each expressing support and, more importantly, concrete business proposals. 3 new contracts were verbally agreed upon before the waiters even cleared the appetizers. Brenda? Margaret Chen from Chen Technologies touched my arm. That restructuring model you proposed last quarter? We're ready to implement it. Full partnership. My phone buzzed with notifications, emails from the accounting team at Miller Industries. Standing behind you 100%, read one. Finally, read another. About damn time, from our senior auditor who'd helped me document everything. Dad stood beside me as I fielded congratulations and business offers. 23 years ago, your mother told me something before she died, he said quietly, so only I could hear. She said, Brenda has my strength, the quiet kind that moves mountains when nobody's watching. She was right. Why didn't you tell me about the power of attorney? I asked. Because you needed to choose your moment, not mine, yours. He smiled. And you chose perfectly. James approached with his tablet. The freeze on their accounts is confirmed. Also, Building Security just reported that Melissa tried to enter the office, probably to destroy evidence. She was denied access. Of course she did, I sighed. Can you ensure all company property is secured? Already done. I also took the liberty of having their desks cleared and boxed. Everything is in legal holding. Through the tall windows, I could see Linda and Melissa in the parking lot. Linda was on her phone, probably calling her lawyer. Melissa was kicking the tire of her Mercedes, the one she'd have to return Monday. Ms. Miller, a waiter appeared with a new champagne glass. From Mr. Walsh's table, they'd like to make a proper birthday toast. For the first time all evening, I genuinely smiled. Tell them I'd be honored. 6 weeks later, I sat in my new office, the CFO suite that had been mysteriously under renovation for 3 years while Linda tried to claim it. The view overlooked the city, and my desk held a small framed photo from that birthday night. Dad and me, standing together after everyone else had left. Success is the best response to those who doubted you. The restitution had come through at 8:43 p.m. that Monday, 4 minutes before the deadline. Melissa had sold her Mercedes, her designer wardrobe, and the jewelry she'd bought with stolen funds. The $25,000 was returned in full, plus the $3,000 in overdraft fees and interest. Linda had to liquidate her secret investment account, the one she'd been funding with embezzled money. The divorce papers were filed within 2 weeks. Dad offered her a modest settlement if she signed a non-disclosure agreement and relinquished all claims to Miller Industries. She signed. The company audit revealed more than we'd initially found, almost $400,000 diverted over 3 years through elaborate schemes. Some of it was recovered. The rest became a very expensive lesson in trust. Under my financial leadership, Miller Industries grew 40% in the first quarter. The restructuring I'd proposed but Linda had blocked was finally implemented, saving us $2 million annually. Harrison Walsh's increased contract alone brought in $10 million in new revenue. Melissa had to get a job, her first real job at 28. She was working as a junior sales associate at a department store, selling the same designer goods she used to buy with my money. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Linda moved back to her mother's house in New Jersey. The last I heard, she was trying to start a consulting firm for women entrepreneurs. Nobody was hiring her. "Any regrets?" Dad asked during our weekly lunch. "No," I said honestly. "I gave them every opportunity to be different. They chose who they wanted to be." "And you chose who you wanted to be," he replied. "Your mother would be proud." My credit score had recovered. The house I'd been saving for? I bought it last week, with cash, thanks to my CFO bonus. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success, earned honestly and defended fiercely. Looking back, I learned something vital about strength and boundaries that I wish I'd understood years earlier. Boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges to respect. For too long, I believed that being kind meant having no limits. That family meant accepting any treatment. That love required endless sacrifice. But real love, the kind that builds rather than destroys, requires boundaries. It requires saying, "This far and no further." My silence hadn't been weakness, though they'd mistaken it for that. It had been strategic patience, gathering evidence while they revealed their true nature. Every insult I absorbed, every theft I documented, every humiliation I endured became a brick in the legal case that would protect not just me, but the company our family built. The most powerful lesson? Restraint isn't the same as surrender. I'd restrained myself from petty retaliation, from emotional outbursts, from giving them ammunition to use against me. But I never surrendered my self-worth or my rights. Some people asked if I felt guilty about Linda and Melissa's downfall. The answer was always no. I didn't push them off the cliff, I simply stopped being their safety net while they jumped. Setting boundaries with family is perhaps the hardest thing we ever do. We're taught that blood means unconditional acceptance, but that's how abuse thrives. Real family, chosen or biological, respects your boundaries because they respect you. Dad and I grew closer after that night. Without Linda's toxic influence, we could finally have real conversations. He shared stories about Mom I'd never heard, about her quiet strength and fierce protection of what mattered. "You're just like her," he told me one evening. "She never started fights, but she always finished them." Now I understand what he meant. Finishing fights doesn't mean destroying people. It means ending the cycle of abuse, professionally and permanently. A year later, our family looked completely different, smaller but stronger, built on respect rather than manipulation. Sometimes the best birthday gift is the truth. Melissa reached out 6 months after that night, not for money, but with a genuine apology. She was in therapy, working through why she'd felt entitled to take what wasn't hers. I didn't welcome her back with open arms, but I didn't shut the door completely either. Redemption is possible, but trust must be earned. I thought being strong meant taking whatever I wanted, she admitted during coffee she paid for with her own earned money. I never realized that real strength is building something yourself. Linda never apologized. Her pride wouldn't let her. The last update I got from Dad's lawyer was that she'd remarried. Another wealthy businessman. I wished him luck. He'd need it. Dad semi-retired, keeping the CEO title but delegating most operations to me. We'd have lunch every Thursday, discussing business but also life, memories of Mom, and plans for Miller Industries' future. The company thrived under transparent leadership. Employees who'd been afraid to report irregularities now came forward freely. We implemented new controls, better oversight, and most importantly, a culture where integrity mattered more than connections. My 33rd birthday was quiet. Dinner with Dad, a few close friends, and James Chen, who'd become like family. No grand ballroom, no 100 guests, no drama. Just people who genuinely cared about me, not what they could take from me. Any words of wisdom for your 33rd year? Dad asked, raising his glass. Yes, I smiled. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. When they take from you, bill them. And when they underestimate you, let them, right until the moment you don't. The quiet ones often do hold the most power. We just use it differently. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or taken advantage of by people who should protect you, I want you to know your patience isn't weakness. It's power waiting for the right moment. What boundaries do you need to set in your life? Share your thoughts below. If this story helped you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. And remember, the quiet ones often hold the most power. See you in the next story.